Chinese doctors' lives are in danger. So it's the new year, guys, and I'm going to start out with something positive. There has been a new law that's been passed in China that sort of protects doctors and nurses and so on. And why is this a good thing, do you ask? Well, it's because doctors are murdered in China quite often. And it's something that, of course, my wife being a doctor really bugs the absolute crap out of me. Now, on Christmas Eve, it's called Ping An Ye in Chinese, a female doctor was brutally murdered. Now, of course, I can't show you the footage. I'm going to blur out and explain to you what's going on here. But basically, the doctor's filling out some information on the computer. This man pulls out a big knife, walks up behind her, and basically saws her head off and relentlessly stabs her. Of course, the other nurses, they don't know what to do. One of them runs away. Another one tries to calm him down, but nothing can be done. And this is quite common in China, the bystander effect. Nothing will be done. People do get murdered, and no one will step in to help out. Okay, so why would this happen? Well, believe it or not, it's because this man in his 50s brought his elderly mother, 95 years old, to the hospital, and he felt that she was not being treated correctly. The doctors were giving advice on what kind of medicine she should take, etc., but the family insisted that she only gets these kind of vitamin IV drips, and that's quite common in China to see people going in and they sit there for hours getting these medicinal drips. Sometimes it's cold medicine, sometimes it's TCM, most of the time it's antibiotics, but it's basically a drip, and everybody believes that that's what you do. Anyway, without getting into the details too much, the guy and his family were very upset and causing a ruckus because they felt like their mother was not being treated correctly, and she was not being given her own room to stay in. She was being kept in the ER. So after like a long time of him complaining, etc., he just lost his cool and he went in and killed the doctor savagely like that. Now, this is not an isolated incident. You know, obviously my wife is in contact with other doctors. They have their own WeChat groups. They talk to each other. And many times in the past, she's shown me horrific videos, because every time a doctor gets killed, it gets shared around amongst the other doctors, obviously. They're like, this is ridiculous, this is crazy, what are we going to do? And I specifically remember one from 2 years ago, where a guy had fixed someone's teeth, okay, and he'd replaced one of the teeth with like an artificial tooth, so a dentist now. Okay, 10 years later, the guy complained that his tooth was turning yellow or something like that, and he was really frustrated, went to complain to the doctor. They were like, piss off, mate, it's 10 years old, what do you expect? He followed the doctor home and beat him to death with a hammer, caved his entire face in, and of course I saw the pictures of the aftermath because they were shared to my wife, and it was horrific. And, well, I can go on and on and on. Officially, there have only been something like 24 doctors murdered in the past couple of years in China, but actually, it's way worse than that. Seamilk and myself walked past a clinic in Huizhou near to where our Churchill Customs thing was, where there was blood everywhere, and it turns out a guy had been given the wrong medicine that had made him infertile or something, and he went and he stabbed a whole bunch of nurses and killed a bunch of nurses and doctors. So this idea of only 20-something people being killed, when I personally have seen the aftermath of at least one of these big stabbings, is bollocks. It's got to be way more than that. And maybe it is only 24 doctors, but nurses and other people that are at the scene or who are held accountable end up being the target of these attacks too. So again, I haven't really talked about why this happens. Well, it's complicated, but at the same time very simple. In China, if you take your relative to the hospital, of course you expect them to cure whatever disease you want. But people have this arrogance about them there. They feel like, hey, you're a doctor, you must fix this. All right? Oh, and if you can't fix that, that's okay. We'll give you more money and then you'll fix it. It's kind of like this arrogant, like, I'll throw whatever money I need to at you, but then you must do your job. You must fix this problem. You must cure her. And there is a big amount of bribery and corruption in the medical system in China, because don't forget, doctors are actually paid very little in China. It's not like the West where you say, oh, you're a doctor, and all of a sudden people have respect for that person. Hey, they must be rich. They must have studied a lot, they must, they have an elevated social status. In China, if you're a doctor, it's kind of like being a policeman or any other civil servant. They don't get paid a lot. Average salary is about $1,000 plus minus. Of course, there's extras on top of that. But basically, as an English teacher, I was earning more than my wife as a doctor at the time, just to give you an idea. So, you got the situation where you got fairly low paid doctors. They work really hard. They've got a lot of things to do. And of course, because of that low pay, things start to happen. They start to take kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies to push more drug sales. They start to accept red packets, lucky money under the table in order to do a better job. This is all very well documented. This is stuff that I've seen with my own bloody eyes when I had to take my wife in for her surgery, and I refused to pay these sort of lucky money bribes to the doctors, but she insisted that that's how things work there, and that's just what we have to do, and so I had to go along with it, and I'm not happy with that, but that's the way China is. So you have this idea of bribery, corruption in amongst with the doctors. You've got this idea that money can basically cure anything and fix anything. So when things go wrong and a patient dies, in this case, by the way, the patient didn't even die, just wasn't being treated the way they wanted them to be treated. But if a patient dies, these people feel very indignant. They're like, well, they died because it's your fault. You, the doctor, it's your fault that our elderly relative died. You didn't give them enough care, because you're corrupt, and we didn't pay you enough money, so you messed up on purpose. Or they feel like, hey, I paid for a service and I didn't get it, so what's going on here? So next step is, let's take out our frustration. It's the doctor's fault that my relative died or had a bad surgery or whatever, or the reason my health is poor is because my doctor didn't do a good job, so guess what? I'm going to take it out on them. And that's what happens. People go in and they murder doctors in China. It sounds ridiculous, right? Sounds like I'm trying to sensationalize something, right? No, I'm not. So much so that doctors actually staged a protest, a rare protest, because so many of their peers and colleagues were being killed and attacked. And they found out that 2/3 of all doctors have had some kind of massive altercation with their patients. Maybe not resulting in death or serious bodily injury, but still big altercations. My wife is not excluded from this. I had to go and set up security cameras in her clinic. I put in fake security cameras. I also put a real one, don't worry. But I put up personally because there was an incident in her clinic where one of the patients became irate and kicked open the door into her office and threatened her and threatened everybody else in the clinic. And I know China, nobody would have stepped in to stop him if he had attacked my wife. So of course, I was very irate. I went out to Huajianbei. I bought the most realistic looking fake cameras that are out there with flashing lights to put up around the place, and also put a discreet one to actually record in case anything happened. But I put those up as a deterrent because my wife would potentially be attacked by an irate patient. Remember, tempers flare very quickly when it comes to people's health in China, because wealth and health are the most important things in China. So if you take your child in and you find out, like what happened to my wife, is they found out that there'd been fake vaccines given out. Luckily, my wife's clinic was not affected. Well, apparently it wasn't, but I'm pretty sure it was anyway. But anyway, they officially announced that no fake vaccines had gone to her clinic. But still, irate parents were coming in, blaming the doctors for giving fake vaccines to their kids. What happened with the guy that flew off the handle and threatened my wife was, as part of the doctor duty, she must ask patient details. And they'd come in for some immunization for their kid, and she had to get a working phone number from either parent, and all the numbers that they had given her were fake. In other words, she'd check on them and they'd be false numbers. So she kept asking for a real number, and this is what set this guy off, because obviously the guy's either a criminal or he has got massive debt or whatever it is, so he doesn't want to be on the system. So he went ape and smashed down the door and caused all this kind of crap. It's a dangerous job. So if you're a doctor in China or you are in the medical field, I know a lot of you obviously because I trained doctors for so many years in hospital etiquette, rules, English, medical terminology, whatever you want to say. I trained doctors and I trained a lot of them. So I know a lot of doctors, especially in Shenzhen. They are all wonderful people. They're hardworking. They have to deal with a lot of crap. And the fact that they're targeted for attacks, revenge attacks by these horrible, cowardly people, because every single time a doctor's killed, it's in the most cowardly way. They always sneak up on them, stab them from behind, attack them with meat cleavers, hammers, you name it, follow them home, do all this kind of crap. It's always a cowardly thing. They are constantly under threat of being attacked out of the blue, sometimes with no explanation, especially since after this thing happened where this female doctor pretty much got her head cut off, they checked and the hospital had followed correct protocol with these patients, 100%. There was no fault on the part of the hospital or the doctors, and yet this guy still flew off the handle. Remember, security in hospitals in China is very low. Rules are never followed in the hospitals. You still get people smoking in the hospital elevators, and you've got people, doing all sorts of crap inside the hospitals. It's not a safe place to work. So, hats off to all the Chinese doctors who have to live under this threat every day. Hats off to the Chinese government for finally stepping in and making a law that could potentially help doctors in need. And hats off to all of you for watching my videos. And now you know a little bit more about China that perhaps you didn't know in the past. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. As always, you know the drill. Don't be bad to the doctors. If they treat you badly, walk away, file a complaint with their superiors. This is something that can be done in China. This is something that's very common. There are websites set up. There are phone numbers you can call. Do that rather than go and stab someone to death, because at the end of the day, you're still going to get arrested for murder, you stupid dumbasses, you cowards. Anyway, stay awesome. Can't wait to see you in the next one. And don't forget to check out Laowa86. He's recently done a very good recap of 2019. Kind of stole my thunder because I had something like that planned, but a funny one. But there's no reason to do it twice. Go check out his video. He's pretty succinct and in covering everything positive and negative about 2019. We have our ADVChina, the most important one. Go check it out. That's where we do our adventures around the world. And of course, we have a podcast. And, this week, obviously there wasn't one because it's kind of a break, and Seamilk and I are currently in completely different places and it's difficult to do. But the next week, you'll see another one. Guys, thank you for watching. See you next time.